stands for Corruption, Gender and Sustainable Development. COGS is funded by the Irish Research Council in partnership with the Department of Foreign Affairs under Strand 2B of Coalesce, which is the Collaborative Alliances for Societal Challenges Strand. COGS is a joint undertaking between Dublin City University, Ireland, and the Université Norbert Zongo at Burkina Faso. COGS is led by Dr. Robert Gillanders, co-director of the Dublin City University Anti-Corruption Research Centre, and Dr. Eugenie Maïga, Associate Professor of Economics at the Université Norbert Zongo. My name is Michael Breen, co-director of Dublin City University's Anti-Corruption Research Centre. DCU's Anti-Corruption Research Centre is Ireland's first academic centre dedicated to research, policy and education on corruption and anti-corruption. It's a multidisciplinary research centre that brings together researchers from across DCU's schools and faculties. I'm very pleased to welcome you all today to this event and to welcome our very distinguished speakers. Our first guest is Professor Colm O'Gorman, Professor of Entrepreneurship and Executive Dean of Dublin City University's Business School. And thank you very much, Professor O'Gorman.
Thanks, Michael. Do you want me to start then?
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I'm just going to say a few short words and just to welcome everybody to sort of a DCU hosted virtual event. And thanks for joining us this morning. So I suppose a special welcome to anybody from outside Ireland, and particularly we have the VP for Research from the University of Norbert Zongo. So Maria Laura, I'll try Sugoti Gisu. So you're very welcome and thanks for joining us. And I suppose I'll just begin by offering congratulations to Michael and Rob in terms of the centre, but in terms of this project to Rob and Eugenie and the collaboration between us and the University of Norbert Zongo. So congratulations on the project. It's a significant financial win. It's going to allow resources to address a very interesting question, and I think we're going to learn a bit more about the project over the course of the morning. Just, I suppose, a little bit to those of you who don't know DCU and DCU Business School in particular, just want to sort of a couple of small points. The project and its focus, I suppose, aligns with the school's commitment to responsible business practice. Okay, so we're a signatory to the UN supported PRIME initiative, so Principles of Responsible Management Education. And as part of that, we're committed to making sure our students are exposed to issues around responsible management. Okay, and we do that in very tangible ways in terms of in the curriculum and reviews we've made to our curriculum. So recently, a couple of weeks ago, we had all our first year students engaged in a hackathon around social and sustainable issues such as fast fashion and things like that. So so the project fits and sits well with us as a school. I think more importantly, and I think Rob and Eugenie will probably tell us a little bit more about it, but from what I know about the project, I think it aligns very much with our ambition that as a school that the research that we do has an impact. Okay, and clearly that impact is around the academic community and high quality and rigorous research and publications that stem from that. But the school and this project in particular, I think it's called out in the project, is committed to make sure that our research has an impact on practice. So it changes how people do things, okay? Whether that's an entrepreneur in this case, whether it's a policymaker or a government official, whatever, those people who are involved in doing things that shape business. So and I think as we learn, I think this morning that, the project specifically is going to involve outputs in terms of training workshops and guides and things like that. And that fits and sits very well with us as a school. Okay, so it's really important to us that our research is top notch, high quality, but also that it makes a difference. So it has an impact on the lives of people. Finally, just Michael mentioned that my area is entrepreneurship, so that strand of this project is of particular interest to me. And I suppose when I think about entrepreneurship, and most of us think that in the sense of generally it's a good thing and can be a good thing for economic development and economic growth. Not always, but in general, it is a good thing. But at a micro or an individual level, it's a kind of a difficult thing. It's a challenging thing. So all entrepreneurs face barriers and constraints in terms of their knowledge, their research, their resources, their networks, and things like that. And then I suppose what this project is layering in. Well, you also might be in an environment where you're facing challenges due to corruption. And then it's layering in, I suppose, the challenge of sextortion. And essentially, if I understand it, how that might push people away from institutions and government departments and officials and things like that, that should in effect be supporting people as they try to make their own livelihood or engage in entrepreneurship. So as a project, it sounds really interesting to me, and it's clearly something that's very important. So I'll just finish by wishing everybody involved best of luck with the project. Thanks, Michael.
Thank you very much, Colin, for your kind words, and I'm sure the project team will really appreciate that. I'm very pleased to introduce our next distinguished speaker, the Vice President for Research at the Université Norbert Zongo, Professor Marie-Laure Sugoti-Gisu. Thank you very much for joining us today, Professor, and I will leave the floor over to you.
Thank you. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Marie-Laure Sugoti-Gisu. I'm a professor in plant biology and ecology, and the Vice President in charge of research and international cooperation of Norbert Zongo University. It's with great honor and pleasure that I speak at the Love event this morning on behalf of the President of Norbert University. University Norbert Zongo is one of the top higher education institutions in Burkina Faso and in the third largest public university in the country. As in the motto says, science excelle ut melius servies, which means excelling through knowledge to better serve. Our university is deeply attached to excellence in both teaching and research. Corruption undermines economic development in many ways, and this project will address the effect of corruption on gender, education, health, and sustainable development. These are all areas where there is much room for improving in developing countries like ours. I commend the team for identifying a relevant research topic and congratulate them for winning the Irish Research Council funding to undertake this research. I'm confident that the result of COGS will be useful for better policies making in Burkina Faso and countries. I wish them a successful collaboration and hope for many future collaborative projects between Dublin City University and University Norbert Zongo. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Sugoti-Gisu, for your support and for your well wishes. I'm delighted now to hand the floor over to the project team, Dr. Robert Gillanders and Dr. Eugenie Maïga, who will introduce the COGS project and share some preliminary results. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Michael, and thanks so much to Colm and Marie-Laure. I'm going to show a couple of slides that we've prepared, but before I do that, I really do want to thank all the people who supported us in applying for this funding, both in DCU Business School, the wider university, and in University Norbert Zongo. Our research support team and our research development officers are really a big part of why we succeed. When we succeed, and bear no fault for when we fail to succeed. So our thanks to Eamon McConnon and his colleagues there, and also to the ARC membership. As Michael said, we're a very interdisciplinary centre, and as you're going to see, this is a very interdisciplinary project and undertaking. So COGS, as we call it, Corruption, Gender and Sustainable Development, as it says, it's a joint undertaking between our universities. Very thankful for the support from the IRC and DFA. And again, it's great to see this kind of research getting funding, because, as I always say, there are a few worse ills in the world than corruption, which we can take as being the abuse of public power for private gain. And it's not overly dramatic to say that it ruins lives and economies and societies. It's an economic and social poison that the costs and nasty effects of particularly fall on those who are already disadvantaged and marginalized. And countries that are more corrupt grow more slowly. They attract less foreign direct investment and even have lower levels of domestic investment. They are more unequal. They are more violent. And as we've seen recently, that violence can spill over to neighboring countries from very corrupt countries. And they've higher rates of poverty and infant mortality and all kinds of truly horrible things. Lower rates of vaccine uptake. Corruption is something that really ruins societies. And we also know from an interest in literature that the corruption kind of makes it more difficult for us to solve collective action problems such as climate change, trying to build water infrastructure and so on, because what corruption does is allow elites to protect their own existing interests and distort policy away from what would be for the social good. So we always say that if you want to get to the SDGs, and we should all want to get to the SDGs, they're an ambitious but vitally important roadmap for our planet, we have to fight corruption. If we want to fight corruption, well, we're going to have to understand it. And in particular, we think it's important to understand how corruption can serve to block people from being kind of active and full participants and contributors and beneficiaries from sustainable development. So what COGS is going to do is look at some ways that we think have gone unexplored, largely because the data weren't there until recently. Some unexplored ways in which corruption gets in the way of gender equality, makes countries and societies and individuals more dependent on humanitarian need by blocking off kind of escape routes from poverty, and, as I say, blocks climate change action. So we've got 4 strands in COGS. Strand 1 looks at how a particularly egregious and horrible form of corruption, sextortion, where public officials demand sexual favors from people in order to, complete paperwork or avoid problems with the police and so on. How does this form of corruption act as a particular barrier to female entrepreneurship, as Colm suggested, by driving people away from the institutions that are required in order to function as an entrepreneur, or indeed as any kind of economic agent, filling in paperwork, avoiding inspections, dealing with tax inspections, and so on. What extent does sextortion deter female entrepreneurship and block that escape route from poverty for so many people? So that's strand 1, and we've got a couple of preliminary results on this that Eugenie is going to share with you shortly. Strand 2 then is also very important in terms of empowerment for different groups in society, and that's the idea that gender stereotypes or gender-based stereotypes can affect people's perceptions of corruption, and in that way make it more difficult for women to seek political careers, from entering the political marketplace, which is so important, as we know, in terms of delivering outcomes that are good for everybody in society. Strand 3 then is based on findings, and again, that we'll share some kind of our review of the literature thus far on this. Corruption really gets in the way of people being able to access basic services such as education and healthcare by distorting policy, by embezzlement. We have all these kind of horrible effects on education and health, and it's reasonable to speculate and hypothesize that this again would have a gender-based dimension, whereby corruption is particularly difficult, makes it particularly difficult for women and young girls to access education and health. And we've got some ideas about how we can test this for the first time, we believe. And then finally, excuse me, finally, the final strand, but by no means the least important strand of COGS, is to investigate how, by killing trust between people in a society, corruption makes it more difficult for people operating within the same government, but in different civil service departments, to collaborate to fight climate change. So the idea being that if I'm in the Department of the Environment and we really don't trust the people in the Department of Finance and vice versa, for us to work together to design policies, transfer funds, and so on is going to be very, very difficult, and make it very, very difficult for even well-intentioned people to take steps necessary to secure the future of our planet. So in a nutshell, in one slide, that's what COGS is going to try and do over the next 3 years. And these are the people who are going to try and do it. So as Michael mentioned, Dr. Eugenie Maïga and I are the Co-PIs of this project. And we are very, very happy that we've been able to take on and work with two excellent early career researchers, Dr. Doris Adja, who's based in DCU, and Dr. Idrissa Udrago, who's based in UNZ. And you know, having worked with Doris and Idrissa for the last 3 months or so now, my great fear is about COGS is not that we won't be able to do the work, but will I be able to hang on to two such talented young people for the duration of the program? It's been a really great experience. And then we're joined on two of our strands by some co-investigators who bring particular expertise in some of the things we're interested in. Dr. Amadou Bowley of the African Development Bank. Amadou is an expert in experimental approaches to understanding corruption, which are very important for strands 2, and also has a great deep theoretical grasp of the ways in which corruption can change human behavior, which comes into play in strand 4. And then to give us the entrepreneurial expertise that we need, we're joined by Dr. Roisin Lyons, who is at UL, University of Limerick. Roisin is really excellent young researcher in this, and a big part of what she studies is how what shapes people's attitudes to entrepreneurship and kind of entrepreneurial education. We're really delighted that Amadou and Roisin have agreed to join us on this journey. So that's what we're trying to do, and these are the people who are going to try and do it. And to convince you that we have some hope of actually accomplishing our goals, Eugenie now is going to share with you some of our preliminary results. So over to you, Eugenie.
Thanks, Mike, Robert, actually. Thank you very much for summarizing what the project is about. So can we go to next slide? Thank you. So I'm going to share preliminary results about strand 1 and strand 3 of our research program. Regarding strand 1, which is a paper on corruption and sextortion. And as Rob said, sextortion is sexual extortion by people that are in a position of power to be able to provide different types of services to the people that we're trying to use their power against. So this is a form of corruption that is really understudied, but but it's also a type that is really affecting a large population of the world, especially the female population, in a very negative manner. So what we found, looking at the data, using the data and looking at the relation between corruption and sextortion, is that there's a strong association between the general level of corruption and reported rates of sextortion. So as the graph shows, we see a strong positive link between those two elements. And more corrupt countries have a higher level of sextortion, which is not surprising. But what we also find is that there are the causes of these types of abuse of power are quite different. So it's not the same factors that affect it, and so it won't be the same policies that would be needed to be able to get around that. Next slide, please. So regarding one of the ways of trying to get lower sextortion rates. If you look at what could affect it, press freedom is a powerful force for fighting corruption overall, but doesn't predict sextortion rates at all. So it means that you can have a country with high freedom of press, but in that country doesn't mean that you'll have lower corruption, of course, but not lower sextortion rates, which is quite disappointing, because we all love to see press freedom, and press freedom is one of the things that people use to measure high level of democracy in countries. But our funding shows that we can have a good level of press freedom, but it would affect would lower corruption overall, but doesn't have much to do with sextortion rates, which is quite interesting finding. Also, female education attainment and political empowerment are strong predictors of lower sextortion rate. So we're able to impact or to try and curb the sextortion rates. We need to invest in female educational attainment and support programs that are targeted at improving women political empowerment. So this is actually a good thing, because these are things that people have been trying to do. Maybe we'll have another argument in favor of increasing funding for trying to improve educational attainment in women, for women, and also their political empowerment, which is quite hard to do, especially for the political empowerment. We see that it's more difficult to get women into politics than it is to act and have them go to school. But there's another reason for it, so we need to think hard, find devised ways of in good interventions that can affect those two elements, as well be able to help us with lowering sextortion rates. So the preliminary conclusion is twofold. Different types of corruption need different solutions. So for sextortion, we need to act on female educational attainment and empowerment, political empowerment, and for corruption overall, press freedom is a good way of trying to get around that. The second conclusion is that empowerment and education are powerful weapons against sextortion. So we really need to think of ways of improving those two elements for women in the countries where corruption is really a very big, still a very big issue. So these are the results that we got for Strand 1, which was about corruption and sextortion. For Strand 3, next slide, please, where we look at the effects of corruption on access to education and healthcare. We much preliminary result. We at the literature review stage, and also trying to start the data work. So we won't have graphs to show or statistics here. But what we find in the literature is that corruption can affect education and health in several ways. One way is that corruption affects the composition of public expenditures, which in turn can also negatively affect education and health sectors through the reduced funding that will be allocated to those two sectors. Another way corruption affects education and health is that the quality of health services will be lower because of corruption, and this will also lead to increased costs and reduce the volume of care, which of course will limit access to care for patients, especially the poorest ones who don't have the means, to engage in corruption, because corruption often means you have to provide money higher than the regular payment for the service to be able to access it, and the poor people can't do that. So that's another way that the literature has shown that corruption negatively affects the health sector. Another way is that corruption reduces citizen satisfaction with health services, which will erode the public trust in the public component of the health system, and also increase the waiting times in health centers. So you would wait longer if you don't know people, or if you don't have enough means to be able to pass the long lines. and the regular line is there, but other people come and be given service before the line that is there. So the waiting time will increase regarding this component of the basic services that populations might need. The last element that's interesting that we find in the literature is that by increasing the cost of education, corruption can exacerbate the gender gap in education enrollment, given the prevalence of boy preference in many countries. So if you have to use corruption to get your child to school, and we know that usually they prefer to send boys than girls, it means that if you don't have enough means, you have a boy and a girl, you only have money to pay for one slot, you would be only able to maybe send your boy instead of your girl, because you don't have the means to pay for both of them. You prefer to send the boy because they always think that girls will go to their husband's house and they can be taken care of by the husband. So they, if there's somebody to sacrifice, if I may speak in this way, they'll most likely sacrifice the girl. Regarding the data work, our next step for this paper is to test the role that corruption plays in shaping health and education outcome for women using African household data survey, especially the Afrobarometer surveys that we'll use to try and address this link between education and health services access and corruption. So this is what we've done so far. We hope that in the next few months we'll have those two papers completed and work on the other two strands of our research program. And over the next 6 months, we'll be trying to finish up the first two strands while we start some work for the other two. So next slide, if you need to connect with the COGS project, we have a website, www.ie.arc/COGS, where we can find our links to our papers, the data sets, training materials, and policy briefs. And also we'll be publishing some short blogs on our work in progress if you are interested. There's also a Twitter account where we can find information. And also, if you'd like to participate in any of our stakeholder events, you can let us know. One of us, if you have our contacts or through the website, you probably have contacts information on the website to be able to reach us. And well, at this time, I think I'll hand back to Michael for the next step. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Eugenie, and thank you to all our speakers today. Rob, if I'm not mistaken, that brings our proceedings to a conclusion. So
be happy to take any questions.
Yeah, if there are any questions.
More than happy to share our thoughts in chat, or you can ask me out loud.
Because Rob, if I can, yeah, I'd be just interested a little bit more around the training and the policy documents that Eugenie mentioned. Are they going to be targeted within country, Burkina Faso, or are they broader, or just, yeah, that sort of dissemination and sort of trying to impact sort of piece?
Yeah, thanks, Tom. That's a great question, and something we should probably have included more in the slides, because it's very important to us that publicly funded science is disseminated and widely with all stakeholders, and also that we turn some of these academic insights into kind of actionable outcomes. So there's plans for kind of a safe entrepreneurship training session for female entrepreneurs initially in Burkina Faso, based on both our what we learned through this research, and also not directly from what we generate through the research, and also what we learn as we get to our endpoint. So that's something that we're passionate about putting on. There's also plans for kind of online resources for doing interdisciplinary corruption studies. We are a very interdisciplinary team, different stripes of economists, political scientists, and entrepreneurs. So we're gonna kind of share our experiences on that. And then the policy briefs are something that we take very, very seriously. And the plan is for each one of our strands, or perhaps even for each paper within a strand, we make a kind of easily digestible 2 or 3 page summary without the jargon that people can actually take and say, this is what Eugenie, Rob, and the COGS team have learned, and here's something that we can do about it. So these are things that are really of central importance to the project. Thanks, Colin. Any other questions? Okay, well, look, if you do, as Eugenie says, you can find us online in various different ways, and we'll be happy to engage with any or all of you and your colleagues over the next 3 years on this.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that if some people have questions in French, they could ask it, and I try to answer in both French and maybe translate into English, because there might be an issue of language here as well.
Thank you, Jenny. I apologize. I didn't think of that. Sorry.
Yeah, that's okay. I'll just let them know in French. Bonjour à tous. Ceux qui auraient des questions en français pourraient les poser. J'essaierai de répondre en français et de traduire pour les autres en anglais, pour ceux qui auraient des questions. Merci.
So maybe we'll follow up with anything that comes in online. And apologies, I didn't think of the multilingual angle on top of our interdisciplinary work. So we've still lots of things to iron out over the next couple of years, I guess.
Great. Thank you, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you and good luck.
Yeah.
Bye.
Thank you very much.